Hello, welcome to Andara Reacts. Today I'm watching another video from the Fat Electrician. This one is apparently about America's worst tank. So let's find out about that.
Well, this is definitely one of the tanks of all time. Today we're talking about the M247 Sergeant York. For all intents and purposes, it is a futuristic anti-aircraft tank.
This name, Sergeant
You're so
York?
dumb, it's not a tank, it's a SPAG, a self-propelled anti-aircraft gun. Yeah, no, I'm aware, I just call it that because it's an armored vehicle with tracks and a big gun, which to 99.9% of people on the planet, it's a tank. Plus, I refuse to call it a SPAG because it sounds like a slur, okay? And if you don't believe me, if a tanker drives a tank, what is somebody that drives a SPAG called? Now go call somebody out in public and see if you get slapped, all right? Just make it easy for everybody, call it a tank. Anyways, the Sergeant York is an anti-aircraft tank equipped with two 40mm Bofors capable of firing 240 rounds per minute. It's capable of firing a variety of different rounds, including a proximity fuse version, which we covered a couple of weeks ago, and if you watched that video, you would know that 240 proximity fuse rounds coming at you would be a pretty formidable opponent for any airborne adversary. But it gets better because the Sergeant York is going to be equipped with a state-of-the-art radar system capable of tracking up to 48 different targets at any given moment, then automatically prioritizing which target is the biggest threat, and then it was going to send the signals to the turret to auto track and lock onto that target, and all the gunner has to do is pull the trigger. Okay, if you're not picking up what I'm putting down, I'm trying to tell you that America tried to create an anti-aircraft tank that was running on an aimbot. Okay, the key word here being trying, because that's not quite exactly what happened, but we're going to get into that right after.
It didn't work right. Okay.
All right, so in order to understand the Sergeant York, we've got to have a little bit of the history of air defense as a whole. So once upon a time, airplanes were invented. They were then used in warfare. Everybody kind of looked up at the sky and went, huh, that's new. But luckily, new problems usually require the same old answers.
Hey, shoot that guy.
Now we're talking like World War I, right? Warfare at this point in time, not that sophisticated. As far as weapons go, you've pretty much got guns and then bigger guns, right? There's no drones, there's no Hellfire missiles, none of that shit. So people just start shooting at it with whatever they had, everything from machine guns to 90mm artillery. And for America, one of the most effective weapons against planes proved to be none other than the Browning M250 caliber machine gun created by none other than America's patron saint of hole punching, John Moses Browning.
Hole punching.
Now, does that seem a little crude by today's standard where we have specialized missiles and ammunition that know where the plane's at and blow up and track down the aircraft and blow it out of the sky? Absolutely, but it's perfect because it follows the KISS principle, right? What's the problem? Fast-moving planes are hard to hit. Cool, let's just shoot at it a lot with a machine gun. We'll hit it eventually. It's accuracy by volume. So World War II rolls around. Planes get even faster. What do? We just shoot at it even more. You know what shoots more bullets than a single Browning M250 caliber machine gun? 4 Browning 50 caliber machine guns operating off of one trigger inside of the M45 quad mount. Okay, this thing was like Frank's Red Hot, all right? We put that shit on everything. We were putting it on trucks, on armored personnel carriers. We had trailers that we'd pull behind the Jeeps. It was everywhere. And the cool part about this, other than the fact that it's 4 50 caliber machine guns, is while it may not be the best thing around for shooting a plane out of the air for that very narrow application, it was a really good option for pretty much any problem that you could run into on the battlefield, right? You've got 4 50 caliber machine guns pointed up at the sky looking for enemy planes. There's no enemy planes, but there's a bunch of enemy soldiers over there. Oh, there were a bunch of enemy soldiers over there. And that's why the M45 quad mount stood the test of time, because we were still slapping this thing on the back of trucks during Vietnam. We weren't really shooting down a lot of planes with it, but you know what? Every time the trees started speaking, John Moses Browning had something to say back.
Did you chop down this tree?
Tree was speaking?
No.
Seeing how effective this was, the American government was like, you know, it'd be cooler than 450 calibers on the back of a truck if we took even bigger machine guns and stuck them on top of a fucking tank. So they took an M24 Chaffee tank, took the turret off, slapped two 40mm Bofors on it, and created the infamous M42 Duster. And they used it for pretty much the same thing, mobile deforestation. They would roll up with an M42 Duster, and they had a gigantic spotlight, and whenever they heard something, they would just blast the giant spotlight out into the woods and just mow everything down so the enemy was blinded by the light. Now, if you were hunting deer, would spotlighting like that be illegal? Depending on where you live, more than likely. However, we're not hunting deer, this is war, and as you all know, it's never a war crime the first time. So the M42 Duster becomes absolutely legendary among the men that use it in Vietnam. Time passes, we need to keep improving. Unfortunately, missile technology still not doing that great, so the best option we have is still accuracy by volume. How do we keep improving upon what we've already done? let's get an even bigger gun. So they created one of my favorite vehicles of all time, the Vigilante. They took an M113 armored personnel carrier and slapped the biggest Gatling gun ever made on top of it. Now, does that make it better? No, it doesn't, but it does make it way more scary. Could you imagine being held up in a building and you're like, oh, the Americans are here, and then they pull up with that monstrosity and a guy flips a switch and all those barrels start spinning right before that thing starts pissing 3,037 millimeter rounds per minute at your building?
Crap.
Sounds like just a bunch of wasted ammunition to me. Yeah, and this is America. We don't run out of bullets. We run out of bad guys, homie. You have two options in life, really. You can A, run out of ammunition, or B, be $20 trillion in debt. Go ahead and ask the Americans which one they picked.
Guns. Lots of guns.
Nah.
Then the US government came to the conclusion that missiles were going to be the way of the future, so they retired the Vigilante and replaced it with the Mauler, which was going to be an armored personnel carrier that carried a missile launcher that would fire anti-aircraft missiles. And to be honest with you, it kind of sucked for multiple reasons. One, missile technology still not that good at the time, so it wasn't very good at its job at shooting down enemy aircrafts. And then on top of it, it's a bunch of anti-aircraft missiles. It's not a giant machine gun that you can just aim at literally anything that's upsetting you. So the US government realizes, well, this isn't working. They look around and they're like, well, what do we do have that is working? And the only thing that's kind of working is the M42 Duster, still putting in work until 1988. So they say, all right, accuracy by volume it is. They take the M42 Duster and the Vigilante, they kind of merge them together, and they create the VADS, the Vulcan Air Defense System, my favorite anti-aircraft weapon of all time.
Is all this leading up to the worst tank he's talking about?
They took the same M113 personnel carrier and then slapped a 20 millimeter Vulcan rotary cannon on top, capable of firing 6,000 rounds per minute. And again, it works kind of okay on enemy aircraft and even better on enemy everything else. Do I have any examples of this? Why, yes, I do. In 1989, during Operation Just Cause, when the United States military went into Panama to remove the dictator Manuel Noriega, a bunch of his men were held up inside of the headquarters building, surrounded, to which the American forces told them, hey, you should probably go ahead and surrender, to which they were like, nah. To which the American commander said, all right, get the Vulcan up here. Go ahead and fire a warning shot at the front door.
Fire a warning shot.
Gunny, but it's an M224 60 millimeter mortar.
I don't give a shit. Fire the fucking warning shot.
And here's what the building looked like after the warning shot. At which point all of the men inside were
Oh,
like, you know what, on
warning?
second thought, actually, we will go ahead and surrender.
Yeah.
The end. At this point, the problem now is that attack helicopters are a thing. Like the Soviet Union has the Mi-24 Hind, and there's a new tactic that's been developed called pop-up. Basically, an attack helicopter would fly nape of the earth, very close to the ground, hiding behind trees and other terrain features until it got close enough to your troops, and then it would just pop up, and it would fire a missile, pop back down, and dip. By the time you realize you were getting shot at, the enemy was already gone, meaning that this weapon system was basically useless against this tactic, so America had to come up with a new weapon to counter this. So again, they look around at what's working. We've got the VADS. The VADS is working pretty good. Why isn't it working here? Well, it can't target and aim at the helicopter fast enough to respond before the helicopter fires its missile and takes off. So what if we made an anti-aircraft tank with big machine guns that had some super smart radar that would be able to sense the helicopter coming from miles away and just track it, and then the second it popped up, it would shoot it down before it could shoot at us? Sounds like a good idea. Let's put together a bid packet and then let people design one and see what they come up with. So they put together the criteria of what they're looking for. They're looking for a new anti-aircraft tank that's capable of keeping up with the M1 Abrams so it can protect them, and it needs to be able to use its radar systems to track up to 48 different targets at any given time, automatically prioritizing the most important target and auto-tracking that target. And then when it does fire, it needs to have up to a 50% hit rate from up to 2 miles away. Now that sounds pretty cool, but it is a pretty big undertaking. Like, that's a big ask for the technology at the time. Okay, if you're not picking up what I'm putting down, what I'm trying to tell you is they basically have two different strategies for air defense at the time. Okay, we have the keep it simple stupid method. Okay, let's get a big machine gun and shoot a lot of bullets till we hit the target. Okay, and it's really convenient because not only is it good for shooting down planes, machine guns work on pretty much everything, so it's a very versatile weapon. And then we have the cutting edge technology option, you know, things like missiles. Historically, they haven't worked that great up until this point because, well, missile technology just isn't that good. But the technology is going to get better eventually, right? But even then, the problem still remains that you now have a big weapon system with a very, very specific narrow skill set that it needs to be used in, right? If you have a fucking tank that shoots shoots anti-aircraft missiles and you're in a firefight with 300 guys on the ground, it's not really that helpful. So what if we merged the two together? What if we took the desired accuracy of a missile and then applied it to a couple of giant machine guns? Basically, what if we stuck an aimbot inside of the M42 Duster? It would be the perfect weapon. So they have the perfect plan. They have the perfect vision. The only problem is this is a pretty big ask for the technology of the late 1970s, early 1980s. So obviously, we're just going to let the engineers with the military contractors do their thing and build the weapon the way we want it. No, absolutely not. The government steps in and is like, no, we need to cobble this thing together with a bunch of old shit that we've got laying around.
Why would you do that?
Nothing.
This new super advanced anti-aircraft tank needs to be made out of the hull of an old Patton tank from World War II. In addition to that, instead of developing a new radar specifically designed for this mission set, I want you to just take a radar out of an F-16, you know, the radar for a fighter jet that's used to operating in open airspace with no objects around it whatsoever. Yeah, I want you to take that radar, shove it in this thing that's sitting on the ground, surrounded by other solid objects to fuck with the radar and just make it work. So 5 contractors get selected. Sperry, the same guys that made the Vigilante, Raytheon, General Dynamics, Ford Aerospace, and General Electric all get to work on making a prototype. In the meantime, we got to come up with a cool name, right? Okay, it's going to be the super badass state-of-the-art tank. It's going to be just like this expert marksman with an aimbot inside of it that's capable of shooting and auto-tracking anything. What should we name it after? I know the answer. Let's name it after Alvin York, aka Sergeant York, the World War I hero that was a renowned sharpshooter. Makes perfect sense. That's a great name from a great man. Now we just have to build a tank that lives up to that name, and to be honest with you, we're off to a horrible start. So blueprints for the prototypes get submitted. They pick the 2 best options. Those are from Ford Aerospace and General Dynamics. So they go ahead, they give Ford and General Dynamics $79 million each to build their prototype, and then they send them into testing to go head-to-head. In testing, they have the tanks out on the field. They have a bunch of drones fly by. The General Dynamics tank shoots down 19 drones, and the Ford tank shoots down 9. So naturally, they give General Dynamics the bid. I'm just kidding. They give it to Ford. Why the fuck would they do that? Well, apparently, they went ahead and decided that they liked the idea of having the 40mm ammunition that Ford was using over the 35mm ammunition that General Dynamics was using, even though the bid specified it could be any caliber between 30 and 40mm.
Here's what I heard. Blah, 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 science, bigger. And bigger is better.
Why? Why are they so stupid?
Ford goes ahead and they get the bid with their tank that was literally less than half as effective as the General Dynamics version. So Ford then goes, takes the money, builds 4 prototypes, and then starts manufacturing like 150 more of these things. The prototypes get put into testing and they perform absolutely terrible. Now, the Sergeant York tank is supposed to be able to use its radar to lock onto enemies in 2 different ways. One, it can track motion, ideally the props on a helicopter spinning, and it'll lock onto that. And the backup is that it's got thermals so it can lock onto heat signatures. Again, this is being powered by a radar that's out of an F-16, which was designed to operate in open airspace. So that radar is confused by trees and buildings, and if the guns aim up, the gun barrels interfere with the radar as well. So it's pretty much confused about everything.
The tree is talking.
Tree? I am no tree.
If that wasn't bad enough, due to all the added weight from the 240mm Bofors and the radar and all the other equipment that's packed inside of this thing, it weighed way more than it was supposed to, meaning that it was too slow to keep up with the M1 Abrams, which was its entire point for existing. Eventually, some politicians start asking questions, which means journalists start asking questions, then they start writing articles, and then there's public outcry that the government's wasting money on this tank. So in 1984, the Secretary of Defense, Caspar Weinberger, steps in and he's like, you know what? We're going to figure out if this thing actually works with even more testing, and this testing is going to cost $54 million.
Oh my goodness.
Now it's getting covered by the press. They've got the Sergeant York out there doing this expensive testing, and it's not able to shoot down a single drone that's moving like an actual combatant would move. So then they resort to just flying the drones low and slow in a straight fucking line, which is something an enemy aircraft would never do, and it still can't hit. But then it finally grazes one.
But I dicked it. It hit the bed.
You're still out.
You're still
Too fat!
Now, it doesn't shoot the drone down, but it did damage it. And according to protocol, the dude running the drone immediately hits the self-destruct button to blow it up. That way the drone didn't fly off and crash into something important, which is exactly what he was supposed to do. But all the journalists that were there interpreted that as the Army trying to rig the testing to make the Sergeant York look like it was effective. So now there's even more public outcry that we need to quit wasting money on this tank because the Army has invested billions upon billions of dollars in this thing and it simply doesn't work. So then they go out and they have the helicopter drone just hover, which is something that would never ever happen, but that's what they do. And the York still cannot shoot down the drone. So then they add a bunch of radar reflectors to make it even more obvious to the York's radar where this helicopter is and have it be completely stationary. One of the lead journalists on this story described this as the equivalent to, and I quote, testing a bloodhound's ability to track a man by covering him with beef steaks and standing him still alone upright in the middle of a parking lot. And the Army is like, no.
Pretty much.
It works. It works and it's awesome. You know what we're going to do? Let's go. We're going to have a bunch of British officers
you handicap them from making it properly.
And Congress people that doubt us and bring them out to the field and we're going to put on a demonstration and show them how awesome this thing is. And you know what? While we're at it, you know who else would love to see how effective this tank is? Alvin York's widow, who is 82 years old. We should bring her out here with Congress and show off the awesome tank that we named after her husband. So that's what they do. They go out to the training field. They get a nice set of aluminum bleachers, you know, the ones that burn your ass every time you go to your nephew's Little League game, those ones. And they set them out there. They get Congress, a bunch of high-ranking foreign military guys, and Alvin York's widow sitting out there looking at the Sergeant York on the practice field. And the only thing in eyesight is the latrine. The demonstration kicks off. The first drone's flying by. The operators inside the Sergeant York turn on the radar. It's supposed to auto lock onto the helicopter. It's literally the only thing that's moving. And instead of beaming up to lock onto this helicopter drone, it immediately pans over and aims at the latrine because it sees the movement from the exhaust fan and interprets that as the closest viable target and aims at that instead.
Oh my
drone
gosh, you're
finishes
kidding.
its flyby. Nothing happened. Okay, drone loops back around to do another flyby. Operators inside the Sergeant York are like, okay, rough start. No big deal. We locked onto the shitter instead of the helicopter. It's fine. Let's switch over to heat signature. So they switch over to lock onto a heat signature and it does exactly what it was programmed to do. It locks on to the closest heat signature, which is not the helicopter. It's the hot ass bleachers with all the congressional members and Alvin York's widow on it. So now Congress and Alvin York's widow are looking down the barrels of two 40mm Bofors, at which point everybody begins running and jumping off of these bleachers for obvious reasons. Some of the Congress people and military officers get hurt, they twist their ankles, whatever, and obviously this ends up being the end of the Sergeant York program, and it is considered a gigantic failure.
What, are we returning? Keep my name out your mouth.
Today, there's only a couple left in existence. There's one in the Alvin York Historical Park in Tennessee, and the other one is inside of the Air Defense Training Facility at Fort Sill, both of which stand as gigantic 54-ton, $8 billion examples of you should probably just follow the KISS principle and keep it simple, stupid. Speaking of the Air Defense Training Facility, I do have to give a special thank you to Corey, the curator of that facility, and Fort Sill as a whole for letting me and my friend Ethan, Mr. Habitual Line Crosser here on YouTube, to come on to post and get an exclusive tour for our new Pepperbox exclusive TV show, Habitually Fat. That tour is where I got a lot of this information, and we filmed the entire thing, and that is our first episode ever, and it is up on Pepperbox right now if you wanted to go check it out.
Aircraft circles back around. Now we're using the heat-seeking option. And so this thing, again, switch the system on, everything checks out immediately.
And they made poor Sergeant York's 89-year-old widow run away from the burning bleachers
off here,
because of the tank
side.
named
and
after
it begins
her
to
husband.
track on those aluminum bleachers. And Congress finds themselves looking down the barrels of two hot 40mm. At that point, basically, they jump off of the bleachers. You get sprained ankles. When you hurt Congress, that's going to be the end of your program.
It worked perfect. Why are they mad?
It worked perfectly, just not
on the shit house and the politicians. It's perfect. It's a perfect machine. It hates piles of shit. It's awesome. It's my new favorite tank. Other than that, thank you for watching. Best.
All right. Well, that was definitely informative and entertaining as usual from the Fat Electrician. Why does government insist on requesting these weapons or whatever to be made and then tie the hands of the people to make them so that they should know it will turn out crap? makes no sense. And all the money wasted on it. I cannot even understand the thought process that behind that. But okay, yep, that was definitely not a good tank. Thanks for watching with me. I will put a link to the original video in the description below. And if you have any recommendations for other videos to watch, let me know. And thanks for watching with me. Remember to hit like and subscribe.